I never thought a simple Thanksgiving dinner would destroy my family forever. I was sitting at our usual table, passing the mashed potatoes to my cousin Tyler, when my sister Jessica suddenly stood up and announced to everyone that I had $12.9 million hidden away. The room went completely silent. My parents, aunts, uncles, and cousins all turned to stare at me in shock and disbelief. Jessica had this triumphant smirk on her face as she revealed she had gone through my laptop and found my investment portfolio. Within minutes, our warm family gathering transformed into an interrogation about my cryptocurrency fortune from early Bitcoin investments. The silence broke when my mother Sarah gasped and dropped her fork onto her plate with a loud clatter. Everyone started talking at once, their voices overlapping in confusion and accusation. I felt my stomach drop as I realized what Jessica had just done to me. "Wait, Marcus, is this true?" my father Robert demanded, his face turning red. "Do you really have that kind of money?" I looked around the table at 20 pairs of eyes staring at me, waiting for an answer. My girlfriend, Emma, who was sitting beside me, squeezed my hand under the table. She knew about my investments, but we had agreed to keep it private until I figured out the best way to handle such a life-changing amount of wealth. "Jessica, what the hell are you talking about?" I tried to deflect, but my sister was already pulling out her phone. "Oh, don't even try to deny it," Jessica said, scrolling through something on her screen. "I have proof right here. Want to hear the conversation you had with your financial advisor last Tuesday?" My blood went cold. "You what?" "I've been recording you for weeks, Marcus. Ever since I accidentally saw your portfolio on your computer during Dad's birthday barbecue in September." Jessica pressed play on her phone, and my voice filled the dining room. "Yes, I understand the tax implications of liquidating that much cryptocurrency," my recorded voice said. "But with Bitcoin at its current price, my original $5,000 investment is now worth $12.87 million. The room erupted. Uncle Greg slammed his hand on the table, making the glasses jump. $12 million? Are you kidding me right now?" My mother started crying. "Marcus, how could you keep this from us? We almost lost the house 2 years ago, and you just sat there watching us struggle." "Mom, it's not that simple," I began. But my father cut me off. "Not that simple? Your mother and I have been working 60-hour weeks to keep this family afloat, and you've been sitting on a fortune this whole time." I tried to explain how I had bought Bitcoin in college with leftover student loan money, how I had completely forgotten about it for years, until a news story about cryptocurrency reminded me to check my old digital wallet. But nobody wanted to hear explanations. They wanted answers about why I had not shared my good fortune. "Do you know what we could have done with that money?" Aunt Linda said, her voice shaking with emotion. "My daughter's wedding is next spring, and we've been saving every penny for 3 years." Jessica was enjoying every second of this chaos. She had strategically chosen Thanksgiving because she knew the entire extended family would be here. Maximum impact, maximum pressure. "I think Marcus owes us all an explanation," she announced, standing at the head of the table like she was conducting a meeting. "And more than that, I think he owes us some financial support. After all, family helps family. Right, Marcus?" Tyler had his phone out and was live streaming the entire argument to his social media followers. "Yo, you guys are not going to believe what's happening at my family dinner right now," he whispered into his phone. I felt completely trapped, surrounded by people who had suddenly turned into strangers. The warm, loving family I had grown up with was gone, replaced by a group of people who only seemed to care about my bank account. "You know what, Marcus?" Uncle Greg said, pointing his finger at me across the table. "I always knew there was something different about you, too secretive, too private. Now I understand why. The accusations kept coming. Every family financial struggle from the past 5 years was suddenly my fault for not intervening. Every missed opportunity, every delayed vacation, every repair bill that had caused stress was now evidence of my selfishness." Emma tried to defend me. "You guys are being completely unfair. Marcus doesn't owe anyone an explanation about his personal finances." "Personal finances?" My mother scoffed. "When your family is struggling and you have millions of dollars, there's nothing personal about it." That was when Jessica dropped her second bombshell. "Actually, I already quit my teaching job last week." I enrolled in that graduate program at Stanford that I've been talking about, the one that costs $60,000 a year. The room went quiet again. Even I was shocked by this revelation. You did what? My father asked. I figured Marcus would be happy to invest in his sister's future, Jessica said with a shrug. After all, what's a couple $100,000 when you have almost $13 million? I stared at my sister in complete disbelief. Jessica, you quit your job without talking to anyone. How are you going to pay for graduate school? That's where my big brother comes in, she said sweetly, but there was steel in her voice. I've already submitted my enrollment deposit and signed the housing contract. Classes start in January. My mother had stopped crying and was now looking at me with expectant eyes. Well, Marcus, your sister has always been the responsible one in this family. Shay's asking for help with her education, not asking for money to waste. And while we're talking about family support, my father added, your mother and I could really use help with our mortgage. We still owe $80,000, and with the interest rates going up, our payments keep increasing. Aunt Linda jumped in immediately. If you're helping with education costs, my daughter Sarah's wedding is already planned for next spring. We've put deposits down on everything, but we're still short about $25,000 for the venue and catering. And my truck has been breaking down every other week. My father continued, I need something reliable for work. Nothing fancy, just a decent pickup truck. Maybe $40,000 should cover it. Uncle Greg was nodding along. You know what would be really smart? Marcus, setting up trust funds for all the kids in the family. Tyler, Sarah, little Michael, Emma's baby sister. Give them all a head start in life. Tyler looked up from his phone where he was still streaming. Actually, Uncle Marcus, I could really use about 10 grand for a proper gaming and streaming setup. This could be my big break into content creation. I felt like I was being attacked from all sides. Everyone had suddenly become a financial planner, calculating how my money should be distributed. They were treating me like a lottery winner who owed everyone a share of the jackpot. Wait. Everyone just stop for a minute, I said, raising my voice above the chatter. This money represents my future security. I want to be smart about it. Invest it properly. Maybe buy a house someday. A house, my mother asked incredulously. Marcus, you're 28 years old and single. What do you need a house for? I'm not single, Mom. Emma and I have been together for 3 years. Emma squeezed my hand again, but she looked uncomfortable with all the attention focused on our relationship. 3 years isn't married, Jessica said dismissively. Family comes first. Blood is thicker than water. Speaking of family, Uncle Greg said, you need to remember everything this family has done for you over the years. When you were struggling in college with your grades, who helped you through those tough times? When you couldn't find a job after graduation, who let you live at home rent-free for 8 months? Aunt Linda nodded vigorously. That's right. Family is supposed to support each other. We've all been there for you, Marcus. Now it's your turn to be there for us. My cousin Tyler had finished his live stream and was now calculating numbers on his phone. So if Uncle Marcus has 12.9 million, and there are 8 adults in the immediate family, that's about 1.6 million each. That seems fair, right? It's not about being fair, I said, feeling my temper starting to rise. This is my money. I earned it through a smart investment decision when I was in college. Smart. Jessica laughed bitterly. You bought cryptocurrency with student loan money and forgot about it. That's not smart. That's lucky. And lucky money should be shared with the people who matter most. My father was quiet for a moment. Then he looked at me with disappointment in his eyes. You know what hurts the most, son? It's not that you have money. It's that you kept it secret from us. That tells me you don't trust your own family. It tells me he thinks he's better than us, Uncle Greg added. Too good to help his hard-working parents and siblings. The guilt was overwhelming. These were the people who had raised me, supported me, loved me through difficult times, but something felt wrong about the way they were demanding money. Like I was obligated to fund everyone's dreams and desires simply because I had been fortunate with an investment. I need time to think about all this, I said finally. This is a lot to process. Time to think. Jessica's voice got sharp. Marcus, I start graduate school in 2 months. I need tuition money now, not after you've had time to think about whether your sister deserves an education. And our mortgage payment is due next week. My mother added. We can't wait for you to make up your mind about whether your parents deserve to keep their home. The pressure was suffocating. Every person at that table was looking at me with expectations, with needs, with demands that I was supposed to fulfill simply because I had been successful with an investment. The warm, loving family dinner I had been looking forward to had turned into a financial planning meeting where I was the only source of funding. Emma whispered in my ear, "Maybe we should leave. This is getting out of hand." But I knew that walking away would only make things worse. My family would interpret it as proof that I thought I was too good for them, that money had changed me into someone who did not care about the people who mattered most. "Let's just table this discussion for now," I said. "We can talk more later, when everyone has had time to calm down." Calm down? Jessica stood up from her chair, her face flushed with anger. "There's nothing to calm down about, Marcus. Either you're going to help your family, or you're not. It's that simple." The next few days after Thanksgiving were absolutely miserable. My phone would not stop ringing with calls from family members, each one trying a different approach to convince me to open my wallet. My mother called, crying every morning, talking about how she had not slept because she was worried about losing the house. My father sent long text messages about family loyalty and responsibility. But Jessica was the worst. She had completely changed from the sister I grew up with into someone I barely recognized. When I refused to immediately transfer money for her graduate school tuition, she escalated to tactics that shocked me. "You know what, Marcus?" she said during one particularly nasty phone call. "Maybe Emma should know about some of your interesting college experiences. Remember junior year when you had that mental breakdown and spent 3 days in your dorm room refusing to talk to anyone? Or how about that time you cried in front of the whole family at Christmas because you were so depressed about your grades?" My stomach dropped. "Jessica, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that Emma probably doesn't know she's dating someone with serious mental health issues. Someone who might not be stable enough to handle $12 million responsibly. You wouldn't dare. Try me. I've got plenty of stories about your college depression episodes. How you used to call mom crying at 2 in the morning because you couldn't handle the pressure. How dad had to drive to your campus 3 times to talk you out of dropping out completely. The threats kept escalating. Jessica somehow got my workplace contact information and threatened to call my boss with concerns about my mental stability. She created fake social media accounts and started posting about how I was a millionaire who refused to help his struggling family, tagging mutual friends and coworkers. "Family members are supposed to support each other," one of her posts read, "but apparently some people think money is more important than blood. My brother has nearly $13 million but won't even help pay for his sister's education. What does that say about his character?" She tagged my company, my college friends, even Emma's family members in these posts. My phone started buzzing with confused messages from people asking if what they were reading was true. The emotional manipulation was relentless. My mother would call and describe in detail how she and dad were struggling to make ends meet, how they were considering taking second jobs to avoid losing their house. She would remind me of every sacrifice she made when I was growing up. Every time she went without something so I could have what I needed. "I gave up my career dreams to raise you children," she said during one particularly difficult conversation. "I never asked for anything in return. But now, when I'm finally in a position where my son could help secure my future, is too selfish to care." Uncle Greg called to tell me about how disappointed he was in the person I had become. "I used to brag about you to my friends," he said. "Smart nephew. Good job in tech, really going places. Now I'm embarrassed to admit we're related." Aunt Linda sent long emails about family values and how money should bring people together, not drive them apart. She included photos from family gatherings over the years, reminding me of all the good times we had shared and how those memories should mean more than holding on to money. The worst part was that they were turning other family members against me. Cousins I barely talked to started reaching out with their own financial requests. Distant relatives who had not spoken to me in years suddenly wanted to reconnect and discuss investment opportunities. Jessica had clearly been spreading the story throughout our extended family network, portraying me as the selfish millionaire who had forgotten his roots. Every conversation became about money. Every family relationship was suddenly transactional. Emma tried to be supportive, but I could see the stress was affecting our relationship too. She had family members asking her questions about my wealth, wanting to know if I was planning to help them with various financial problems. Her younger sister even asked if I could help pay for her college tuition since Emma and I were dating. "This is insane," Emma said one evening as we sat in my apartment going through dozens of messages from family members. "They're treating you like you won the lottery and owe everyone a share of the winnings." But the pressure was working. I found myself questioning whether they were right, whether I was being selfish by wanting to keep control of my own money. These were people I loved, people who had supported me through difficult times. Maybe I did owe them something in return. Jessica seemed to sense my wavering resolve because she ramped up her campaign even more. She started showing up at places where she knew I would be, making scenes in public to embarrass me into compliance. She appeared at my favorite coffee shop near work, loudly talking on her phone about her brother who had millions but would not help pay for his sister's education. She timed it perfectly so other customers and my coworkers could overhear everything. "I just don't understand how family can be so heartless," she said into her phone, making sure her voice carried across the entire cafe. "I mean, what's the point of having money if you won't use it to help the people you love?" The harassment was affecting my work performance. I was constantly distracted by calls and messages, worried about what new public embarrassment Jessica might orchestrate. My boss started asking if everything was okay because I seemed stressed and unfocused during important meetings. "Maybe you should just give them some money," Emma suggested after a particularly bad day. "Not everything they're asking for, but enough to get them off your back." But I knew that giving in to their demands would only make things worse. If I paid for Jessica's graduate school, what would stop her from demanding money for living expenses, housing, or anything else she decided she needed? If I paid off my parents' mortgage, what would stop them from expecting me to fund their retirement or pay for their medical bills? The emotional manipulation was designed to wear me down, to make me feel guilty for wanting to maintain control over my own financial future. But I was starting to realize that giving in would not solve the problem. It would only teach my family that harassment and manipulation were effective tools for getting what they wanted from me. 3 weeks after Thanksgiving, I came home from work to find Jessica sitting on my couch. I nearly jumped out of my skin because I had no idea how she had gotten into my apartment. "How did you get in here?" I demanded. She held up a key and smiled. "I had one made a few weeks ago when I borrowed your keys to get something from your car. You really should pay more attention to your personal security, Marcus." I was furious. "That's breaking and entering, Jessica. You can't just let yourself into my apartment whenever you feel like it. Relax. I'm not here to steal anything. Although I did notice you have some interesting mail piling up." She gestured to a stack of envelopes on my coffee table that I had definitely not left there. My blood went cold as I recognized bank statements and investment documents that should have been in my mailbox downstairs. "Jessica, did you take my mail? I've been keeping an eye on your finances for a few months now. Someone needs to make sure you're not making any stupid decisions with all that money." She picked up one of the envelopes and waved it at me. "Do you know how easy it would be for someone to steal your identity with all the personal information you just leave lying around?" I snatched the mail from her hands and started looking through it. Bank statements, investment quarterly reports, correspondence from my financial advisor. All mail that should have been delivered directly to me. "This is mail theft, Jessica. This is a federal crime. What are you going to do? Call the police on your own sister." She laughed, but there was something manic about it. "Besides, I think you'll be more interested in these documents I found." She pulled out a folder from her purse and spread several papers across my coffee table. My heart sank as I recognized loan application forms with my name and signature. "What the hell is this?" "I applied for a loan using your investment accounts as collateral. $200,000 should be enough to cover my graduate school expenses and help Mom and Dad with their mortgage." I stared at the paperwork in disbelief. My signature was clearly forged, but it was a good enough copy that it might fool someone who was not looking too closely. "You forged my signature?" Jessica, this is fraud. This could send you to prison, only if someone reports it," she said calmly. "And why would you report your sister for trying to help the family?" I grabbed the papers and started reading through them more carefully. She had somehow obtained detailed information about my investment portfolio, my bank account numbers, even my social security number. The loan application listed my cryptocurrency holdings as collateral worth over $12 million. "How did you get all this information?" "I called your financial advisor pretending to be your assistant." Amazing how helpful people can be when they think they're talking to someone who works for you. My hands were shaking as I realized the extent of what she had done. "Jessica, this isn't just theft or fraud. You've put my entire financial future at risk. If something goes wrong with these loans, I could lose everything. Nothing's going to go wrong as long as you cooperate. All you have to do is authorize the transfers, and everyone gets what they need." I could not believe this was my sister talking. The person sitting in my living room was not the responsible teacher who had always been the family favorite. This was someone desperate and dangerous. Someone who was willing to commit serious crimes to get what she wanted. And if I don't cooperate... Jessica's expression hardened. "Then I guess we'll find out whether your investment accounts can survive having their legitimacy questioned. I've been doing some research on cryptocurrency taxation, and I think the IRS might be very interested to learn about some potential unreported income. I've reported everything properly. My taxes are completely legal." "Are they?" "Because I've also been researching mental competency laws. Did you know that if someone can prove you're not mentally stable enough to manage large sums of money, a court can appoint a family member to handle your finances?" The threat was clear. Jessica was prepared to destroy my reputation, my financial security, and my mental health to get what she wanted. She had spent months planning this campaign, gathering information, building a case against me. "You've been planning this since you found out about the money, haven't you?" "I've been planning this since I realized my brother had become a selfish stranger who cares more about hoarding money than helping his family." Her voice was filled with genuine anger and resentment. "Do you know what it's like watching your parents struggle while knowing your brother could solve all their problems with a single phone call? It's not that simple, Jessica. It is exactly that simple. You have more money than you could spend in a lifetime, and your family needs help. The math is not complicated, but looking at her sitting in my apartment, surrounded by stolen mail and forged documents, I realized that this was not really about helping the family. This was about control, about power, about someone who had lost themselves in desperation and was trying to drag everyone down with them. My phone started ringing. It was my mother. "Are you going to answer that?" Jessica asked sweetly. "She's been calling me all day, worried sick about whether you're going to help us or not." I declined the call, but immediately received a text message. "Marcus, please call me back. We need to talk about this family situation. Your father is not sleeping, and I'm worried about his blood pressure. More manipulation, more guilt, more pressure designed to wear me down until I gave up and handed over control of my financial future to people who had proven they could not be trusted with it. You know what, Jessica? I think this conversation is over. I want you to leave my apartment, and I want you to stay away from me until you're ready to apologize and return all the documents you've stolen." She gathered her papers and stood up, but she was not finished. "Fine, Marcus, but you should know that I've already talked to Emma's parents about some concerning behavior patterns I've noticed in you. They're starting to worry about whether their daughter is safe with someone who might be having mental health issues." The final threat hit home. Jessica was not just attacking my finances or my family relationships. She was going after the one person who had stood by me through all of this chaos. Stay away from Emma and her family. Or what? You'll call the police? Good luck explaining to them why you're more worried about your money than your sister's future. After she left, I sat in my apartment staring at the evidence of months of systematic harassment and fraud attempts. Jessica had crossed lines that could never be uncrossed. She had violated my privacy, stolen my mail, forged my signature, and threatened to destroy my relationship with the woman I loved. I realized that giving in to her demands would not stop the harassment. It would only prove that her tactics worked and encourage her to escalate even further whenever she wanted something from me in the future. For the first time since Thanksgiving, I felt clarity about what I needed to do. My family had chosen to see me as a bank account instead of a person, and I needed to protect myself from their toxic behavior. The next morning, I called a private investigation firm that specialized in harassment and fraud cases. I was done being a victim of my own family's greed and manipulation. I need to document everything, I told the investigator, a former police detective named David Chen. Mail theft, forgery, harassment, threats. My sister has been conducting a systematic campaign against me for months. David listened carefully as I explained the situation. The good news is that what you're describing involves several serious crimes. Mail theft is a federal offense. Forgery is a felony. The bad news is that prosecuting family members is always complicated. I don't necessarily want to send my sister to prison. I just want the harassment to stop. Then we need to gather enough evidence to make her understand that you're serious about defending yourself. Sometimes that's enough to change behavior. Over the next week, David helped me install security cameras in my apartment and document Jessica's ongoing harassment. We discovered that she had been conducting a much more extensive campaign than I had realized. She had been calling my workplace regularly, claiming to be concerned about my mental health, and asking to speak to my supervisor about whether I was fit to handle the responsibilities of my job. My boss finally called me into his office to discuss the situation. "Marcus, I've been getting some unusual phone calls about you," he said carefully. "Someone claiming to be your sister has been calling to express concerns about your mental stability and your ability to maintain a security clearance." My stomach dropped. My job required a government security clearance, and any questions about mental health or financial problems could jeopardize my career. "What exactly has she been saying?" "She's claiming that you've been exhibiting erratic behavior since coming into a large sum of money, that you're paranoid and making poor decisions. She also mentioned something about possible money laundering or other illegal activities that might explain your sudden wealth." I felt sick. Jessica was not just trying to get my money anymore. She was actively trying to destroy my professional reputation and career. "Sir, I can explain everything. My sister is upset because I won't give her money, and she's trying to pressure me by damaging my reputation." My boss looked uncomfortable. "Marcus, I'm going to need you to provide some documentation about your financial situation. If there are questions about the source of your wealth, we need to address them before they affect your security clearance." David helped me prepare a comprehensive report documenting the source of my cryptocurrency investments, all tax filings, and the timeline of Jessica's harassment campaign. But the damage was already being done to my professional reputation. The investigation revealed even more disturbing information. Jessica had been contacting Emma's family, trying to convince them that I was involved in dangerous illegal activities and that their daughter was not safe with me. "She called my parents last night," Emma told me, tears in her eyes. "She told them that you might be involved in money laundering or drug dealing, and that I should be careful because people with that much money from questionable sources often have dangerous connections." "Emma, you know that's not true." "Of course I know it's not true. But my parents are scared now. They're asking me to reconsider our relationship until this whole situation gets resolved." The investigation also uncovered the real scope of Jessica's mail theft. She had been systematically intercepting my correspondence for months, opening bank statements, investment reports, and personal letters. David found evidence that she had also attempted to open credit cards in my name, using information from the stolen documents. "This goes way beyond family drama," David explained. "Your sister has committed identity theft, mail fraud, and attempted financial fraud. She's also engaged in systematic harassment and defamation." But the most shocking discovery came when David ran a background check on Jessica's recent activities. Her desperate need for money was not just about graduate school or helping the family. "Your sister has a serious gambling problem," David told me during our meeting. "Credit card records show frequent transactions at casinos, online gambling sites, and what appear to be payments to loan sharks." The evidence was overwhelming. Jessica had been living a double life for over 2 years, maintaining her responsible teacher image while spiraling into gambling addiction. She owed at least $50,000 to dangerous people who had been threatening her with violence if she did not pay. "The graduate school story was just a cover," David explained. "She needs money immediately to pay off gambling debts, not for education." Everything suddenly made sense. Jessica's desperate behavior, her willingness to commit crimes, her escalating threats and harassment. She was not fighting for family support or educational opportunities. She was fighting for her life against people who would hurt her if she did not pay what she owed. Armed with this information, I decided to confront my family with the truth. I invited everyone to dinner at my parents' house, telling them I had made a decision about financial support for the family. "Before we talk about money," I said, placing David's investigation report on the dining room table, "I think everyone needs to understand what's really been happening for the past few months." I presented the evidence systematically: the mail theft, the forged loan applications, the harassment campaign against my workplace and personal relationships. But the biggest shock came when I revealed Jessica's gambling addiction and the real reason she needed money so desperately. "This is impossible," my mother said, staring at casino surveillance photos that showed Jessica at poker tables. "Jessica doesn't gamble. She's the responsible one. She's been hiding this addiction for 2 years," I explained. "The graduate school acceptance letter was fake. She owes $50,000 to loan sharks who have been threatening her with violence." My father looked devastated. "Jessica, is this true?" Jessica tried to deny everything at first, but the evidence was too comprehensive. Bank records, casino footage, recorded phone calls from creditors making threats. Her carefully constructed lies began falling apart. "I can explain," she said weakly. "It started small, just occasional trips to the casino after work. But then I had a few big wins, and I thought I could make enough money to really help the family." "Help the family?" I asked, incredulously. "You've been stealing from your school's fundraising account to pay gambling debts. You forged my signature on loan applications. You tried to destroy my career and my relationship." The room was silent as everyone processed the truth. Jessica was not the responsible sister who deserved family support. She was someone with a serious addiction who had been willing to destroy her brother's life to cover her own mistakes. My mother started crying again, but this time it was from shame and disappointment instead of financial worry. My father sat in stunned silence, realizing how badly he had misjudged the situation. "I'm sorry," Jessica whispered, finally breaking down. "I never meant for things to go this far. The people I owe money to, they're not the kind of people who accept excuses. They said they'd hurt me if I didn't pay by the end of the month." "Why didn't you just tell us the truth?" my mother asked. "Why didn't you ask for help with your addiction instead of trying to steal money?" "Because I was ashamed. Because I knew everyone would be disappointed in me. Because I thought I could fix everything myself if I just had enough money to pay off the debts and start over." The revelation about Jessica's gambling addiction changed everything. The family members who had been pressuring me to share my wealth suddenly realized they had been manipulated into attacking the wrong person. Uncle Greg was the first to apologize. "Marcus, I owe you a huge apology. I had no idea what was really going on. Jessica had us all convinced that you were being selfish and uncaring. She's very good at manipulation," I replied. She had me questioning myself too. My mother was devastated by the extent of Jessica's deception. How did I not see this? How did I miss that my daughter was struggling with such a serious problem? David's investigation had uncovered the full scope of Jessica's gambling addiction. She had been stealing money from her school's fundraising accounts for over a year, taking small amounts that she planned to replace when she won big at the casino. But gambling addiction does not work that way. Every win was followed by bigger losses, and the debt kept growing. "The people she owes money to are not legitimate creditors," David explained to the family. "These are loan sharks who charge extremely high interest rates and use threats of violence to collect debts." Jessica had received dozens of threatening phone calls and text messages. They knew where she worked, where she lived, and where her family lived. The threats were escalating because the payment deadline was approaching. "They said they'd hurt Mom and Dad if I didn't pay," Jessica admitted, sobbing. "That's why I was so desperate. It wasn't just about me anymore. They were threatening the whole family." I felt a mix of anger and sympathy. Jessica had put everyone in danger with her addiction and poor choices, but she was also clearly in over her head with dangerous people. "How much do you actually owe?" I asked. $53,000 with interest," But they want it all by next Friday, or they said things would get very bad for me. The family looked at me expectantly, assuming that now that we knew the truth, I would simply write a check to solve the problem. But I had learned enough about addiction to know that paying off gambling debts without addressing the underlying problem would only enable more destructive behavior. Jessica, I'm willing to help you get out of this situation, but not the way you've been demanding. Paying your gambling debts without getting you proper treatment would be like giving alcohol to an alcoholic. What do you mean? My father asked. I mean, Jessica needs professional help for her addiction before any money changes hands. And she needs to face consequences for the crimes she's committed against me and her school. Jessica panicked. Marcus, there isn't time for treatment programs. These people want their money in 6 days. If I don't pay, they're going to hurt me. Then we need to involve law enforcement. Loan sharking is illegal, and making threats of violence is a crime. I can't go to the police. They'll find out about the money I stole from school, and I'll go to prison. It was a complicated situation. Jessica needed protection from dangerous creditors, treatment for her addiction, and legal consequences for her crimes. But most importantly, she needed to take responsibility for her choices, instead of expecting other people to clean up her messes. I had spent weeks researching addiction treatment and legal options. There are programs that work with law enforcement to help people in situations like yours. You can get treatment while cooperating with police to go after the loan sharks who've been threatening you. What about the money I took from school? You'll have to make restitution, but that's better than letting the addiction continue or putting the family in danger. My parents were struggling to process everything they had learned. Their responsible daughter was not who they thought she was, and their supposedly selfish son was offering to help despite being victimized and attacked for months. I think we all owe Marcus a huge apology, my mother said quietly. We attacked him for protecting himself from someone who was trying to defraud him. Emma, who had been quiet through most of the discussion, finally spoke up. The important thing now is getting Jessica the help she needs and making sure everyone is safe. Jessica, I said, looking directly at my sister. I'll pay for treatment, and I'll help negotiate with your creditors and law enforcement. But you have to commit to getting clean and making things right with everyone you've hurt. She nodded through her tears. I know I messed up everything. I know I hurt you and lied to everyone. I just want to fix this and get my life back. It's going to take time, and it's going to require a lot of work on your part. But you're still my sister, and I'm not going to let dangerous people hurt you if I can help it. The family dynamics had completely shifted. Instead of pressuring me to hand over money for questionable purposes, everyone was focused on getting Jessica real help for a serious problem. Uncle Greg shook his head in amazement. Marcus, you would have had every right to walk away after everything Jessica put you through. The fact that you're willing to help her shows what kind of person you really are. Family helps family, I said, echoing Jessica's earlier words. But real help means addressing problems, not just throwing money at symptoms. The next few weeks were challenging, but they marked the beginning of real healing for our family. David helped coordinate with law enforcement to address the loan shark threats, while Jessica voluntarily entered a residential gambling addiction treatment program. The legal situation was complex but manageable. Jessica faced charges for mail theft and forgery, but her cooperation with the investigation into the loan shark operation resulted in reduced penalties. She was sentenced to community service and restitution rather than prison time. More importantly, she was committed to her treatment program. The residential facility specialized in gambling addiction and had a good success rate for people who completed the full program. The hardest part is admitting that I need help, Jessica told me during one of our supervised phone calls. I convinced myself for so long that I could handle everything on my own. Recovery is not something you have to do alone, I replied. That's what family is for. My relationship with my parents improved dramatically once they understood the full situation. My father came to my apartment to apologize personally. Son, I said some terrible things to you at Thanksgiving. I accused you of not caring about family when you were actually protecting yourself from someone who was trying to take advantage of you. Dad, you didn't have all the information. Jessica is very convincing when she wants to be. That's no excuse. I should have trusted you and asked more questions instead of just assuming you were being selfish. My mother was equally remorseful. I kept thinking about all the times you helped us when you were younger, all the sacrifices you made for this family. I should have known you would never turn your back on us without a good reason. I never wanted to turn my back on anyone. I just wanted to be smart about the money and make sure it was used in ways that would really help people. Emma's family also apologized for questioning our relationship based on Jessica's lies. We should have talked to you directly instead of listening to secondhand information, her father said. With the immediate crisis resolved, I was able to think more clearly about how to use my wealth in ways that would benefit my family without enabling destructive behavior. I established a family emergency fund managed by a third-party financial planner. The fund could provide assistance for genuine emergencies like medical bills or job loss, but it required documentation and approval from an independent trustee. For education expenses, I set up a scholarship program that would pay for college or graduate school, but only for family members who maintained good grades and stayed out of trouble. The program had clear guidelines and accountability measures. I also helped my parents refinance their mortgage at a better interest rate and paid for some necessary home repairs, but I structured it as a loan with reasonable terms rather than a gift. This allowed them to maintain their dignity while getting the help they needed. The goal is to help people become more financially stable, not to make them dependent on my money. I explained to Emma as we reviewed the various programs I had established. That makes perfect sense. Teaching people to fish instead of just giving them fish. Jessica completed her treatment program after 3 months and began the long process of rebuilding her life. She found a new teaching position at a school that was willing to work with her criminal record, and she committed to attending regular addiction support meetings. I'm not the same person who sat at that Thanksgiving table demanding your money, she told me during our first unsupervised visit. I was sick, and I hurt everyone I cared about because I was too proud to admit I had a problem. The important thing is that you're getting better now, and you're taking responsibility for fixing the damage you caused. I want to pay you back for the treatment program and the legal fees. It might take me years, but I want to make it right. Focus on staying healthy first. The money is not as important as making sure you don't relapse. My relationship with Emma grew stronger through the crisis. She had stood by me when my own family was attacking me, and her support meant everything during the darkest moments. I learned a lot about you through all this, she said one evening as we cooked dinner together in my apartment. You could have easily just paid everyone to leave you alone, but you cared more about doing the right thing than taking the easy path. I care about my family, but I also learned that sometimes helping people means setting boundaries and making them face their problems instead of just fixing everything for them. The experience taught me valuable lessons about money, family, and the difference between helping and enabling. Having wealth created opportunities to make a positive impact, but it also revealed the worst in some people and tested relationships in ways I had never expected. My family learned to respect my boundaries and understand that financial success did not obligate me to fund everyone's dreams and desires. More importantly, they learned to communicate honestly about their problems instead of resorting to manipulation and guilt. Jessica's recovery was not easy, and there were setbacks along the way. But with proper support and accountability, she gradually rebuilt her life and her relationships with the family members she had hurt. I used to think money was the solution to every problem, she reflected during a family dinner several months later. But I learned that money without wisdom and self-control can actually make problems much worse. The family gatherings were different now. Instead of the warm but somewhat superficial conversations we used to have, we talked honestly about real issues and challenges. Everyone had learned to value trust and honesty over comfort and convenience. Emma and I got engaged the following spring, and Jessica was one of the first people to congratulate us. I'm so happy that my stupidity didn't ruin the best thing in your life, she said with tears in her eyes. You're my sister, I replied. Your mistakes don't define you any more than my money defines me. Looking back on that terrible Thanksgiving dinner, I realize it was a turning point for everyone in my family. The crisis forced us to examine our values, our relationships, and our assumptions about money and obligation. I learned that having wealth comes with responsibilities, but those responsibilities include being wise about how money is used and refusing to enable destructive behavior. True generosity sometimes means saying no and helping people face their problems rather than just making problems disappear with money. My family learned that love and support, cannot be measured in dollars, and that attacking someone for their financial choices is a good way to destroy relationships that took years to build. Most importantly, Jessica learned that running away from problems by creating bigger problems never works, and that asking for help with addiction is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of strength and wisdom. The money that caused so much chaos ultimately brought our family closer together, but only after we learned to communicate honestly and respect each other's boundaries. Now, when we gather for holidays, we focus on the relationships and experiences that really matter, rather than treating family dinners like financial planning meetings. As I finish telling this story, I wonder how many other families struggle with similar issues when money becomes involved in family relationships. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who felt entitled to your success? How do you balance generosity with wisdom when loved ones are making poor choices? I hope my experience helps others understand that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable destructive behavior, even when that refusal causes temporary pain and conflict. Real family support means helping people become their best selves, not just fixing their immediate problems. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it encourages you to think carefully about your own relationships with money and family. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Give this story a like if it resonated with you. Subscribe for more real-life stories, and share it with anyone who might benefit from hearing about the importance of setting healthy boundaries. Remember that true wealth is not just about having money, but about having the wisdom to use it in ways that build people up rather than tearing them down. Take care of yourselves and the people you love, and never forget that the best investments are the ones that help people grow and become stronger.